I was sitting in a coffee shop in downtown Brookhaven, celebrating my biggest client win in 3 years, when I opened my banking app to transfer my bonus and saw zeros. Not low. Not concerning. Zero. My savings account, $428,000 accumulated over 9 years of brutal work, completely empty. Withdrawn 3 hours ago while I was in a meeting, unable to check my phone, unable to stop what was already done. My hand started shaking so badly I nearly dropped my phone. I refreshed the app once, twice, 3 times. Still zero. I called the bank, my voice barely steady enough to get through the automated system. Riverview Savings, this is Thomas speaking. How can I help you today? My savings account, I managed. It's empty. All of it. I need to know what happened. I could hear him typing. A pause that lasted too long. Ms. Brennan, I'm showing a withdrawal made this morning at 10:47 a.m. for $428,000. The transaction was authorized by joint account holder Patricia Brennan. Patricia Brennan. My mother. That's not possible, I said, even though I knew it was. Even though somewhere deep in my gut, I'd known this was coming for months. I need to speak to a manager. Now. 20 minutes later, I had the full story. My mother had walked into the Brookhaven branch, presented her ID, verified her access to the joint account I'd stupidly added her to 5 years ago, for emergencies, and requested a cashier's check for the full amount. The teller had processed it without question because everything was legal. Everything was authorized. Everything was gone. I sat in that coffee shop for an hour, staring at my phone screen, watching the number stay at 0. People walked past, laughing, talking, living normal lives where their families didn't rob them blind. And I just sat there, trying to remember how to breathe. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't fall apart. Because here's what my family didn't know, that account was a test. And they'd just failed spectacularly. I stood up, left my untouched celebratory latte on the table, and drove straight to my parents' house in Willowbrook Estates, the gated community I'd helped them buy into 4 years ago when Dad's business collapsed and they were facing foreclosure. The house I'd co-signed for. The house where my entire family was probably celebrating right now, thinking they'd outsmarted me. I didn't call ahead. I didn't text. I just drove, my mind absolutely clear for the first time in years. When I pulled up, there were 4 cars in the driveway. Mom's Mercedes, Dad's Audi, my brother Julian's lifted pickup truck, and my sister Natasha's BMW. A family meeting I wasn't invited to. How fitting. I used my key, the one they'd given me when I co-signed, the one they'd never asked for back, and walked in. They were in the dining room. All 4 of them, sitting around the table with paperwork spread out everywhere, champagne glasses in hand, smiling like they'd just won the lottery. Because, in a way, they had. They'd won mine. My mother saw me first. Her smile didn't even flicker. Sophia. Darling, you're early. We weren't expecting you until dinner. I bet you weren't, I said quietly, standing in the doorway. Want to tell me why my savings account is empty? The room went still. Julian had the decency to look uncomfortable. Natasha just rolled her eyes. Dad set down his champagne and folded his hands like he was about to deliver a lecture to a child who'd misbehaved. Sit down, Sophia, he said. Let's talk about this like adults. I'd rather stand. Mom sighed, that theatrical sigh she used when she wanted everyone to know she was being patient with unreasonable people. We knew you'd be upset initially, but once you understand what we've done, you'll see this was the right decision. What you've done is stolen from me. Stolen? Natasha laughed, actually laughed. God, Sophia, always so dramatic. It's family money. We're family. We needed it more than you did. I looked at my sister, 28 years old, living rent-free in a condo I'd helped her lease after her 3rd eviction, driving a car I'd co-signed for, wearing clothes she'd bought with credit cards I'd paid off twice. And she had the audacity to tell me they needed my money more than I did. Needed it for what, exactly? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. Dad cleared his throat. Your brother has an incredible business opportunity. A partnership with some developers in Crescent Bay who are building luxury condos. He needs capital to buy in, and the returns are going to be substantial. We're talking millions within 2 years. Julian wouldn't meet my eyes. It's a sure thing, sophomore. I wouldn't have asked if it wasn't solid. You didn't ask, I pointed out. You stole. We borrowed, Mom corrected. We'll pay you back once Julian's investment pays off. With interest. You'll actually make money on this. I almost laughed. Almost. Because this wasn't the first time they'd borrowed from me. This wasn't even the 10th time. This was just the first time they'd gone nuclear and taken everything at once instead of bleeding me slowly over years. And what about Natasha? I asked, gesturing to the papers on the table. What's her cut? Natasha smiled, that same smug smile she'd been giving me since we were kids whenever she got something I didn't. I'm finally going to law school. A good one. Stanford accepted me for their evening program, and with the money from your account, I can afford it without loans. You should be happy for me, sophomore. You always said I had potential. I said you had potential if you actually applied yourself, not if you stole your way into it. Oh, please, she scoffed. You've been hoarding that money for years, living in your sad little apartment, driving your practical little car, being boring little Sophia who never does anything fun. At least now it's going towards something meaningful. Something that could actually help this family build real wealth. What kind of family steals from their daughter? I shot back. We didn't steal. Dad's voice rose, and there it was, the anger underneath the justification. That account had my wife's name on it. Legally, she had every right to withdraw that money. If you didn't want us to have access, you shouldn't have put her name on the account. And there it was. The truth under all the pretty words about family and helping and investment opportunities. They believed they were entitled to my money simply because I'd been stupid enough to trust them 5 years ago when Mom said she needed emergency access, just in case something happened to me. I'd been 26, fresh out of graduate school, starting my consulting career. She'd cried, talked about how she couldn't bear the thought of not being able to access my accounts if I was ever in an accident, if I was ever in trouble, if I ever needed help. She'd made it sound like protection, like love, like the responsible thing to do. I'd said yes because I'd wanted to believe my mother cared about my well-being more than my bank balance. 5 years later, here we were. You're right, I said quietly. I shouldn't have trusted you. That's on me. Mom's expression softened, thinking she'd won. So you understand. We're family, sweetheart. This is what family does. You're absolutely right, I said again. This is what family does. And now I know exactly what kind of family you are. I turned to leave. Where are you going? Dad called after me. We need to discuss the timeline for payback, work out the details. I stopped at the door, looked back at the 4 of them sitting around the table covered in papers detailing how they'd spend my life savings, and smiled. Actually smiled. There's nothing to discuss, I said. You took the money. It's yours. Congratulations. Confusion flickered across their faces. This wasn't how I was supposed to react. I was supposed to yell, cry, threaten, and then eventually cave because I always caved. That was my role. The responsible one who cleaned up messes. The reliable one who couldn't say no. The good daughter who sacrificed for family. But they'd miscalculated something fundamental. They'd assumed that because I'd always been there before, I always would be. They didn't know about the other accounts. The investments they'd never seen. The assets I'd built in places they couldn't access. The empire I'd constructed specifically because I'd suspected this day would come. The $428,000 they'd taken? It was 23% of my actual net worth. Significant enough to hurt. significant enough to look like everything. But not enough to break me. They had no idea what was coming. Because here's what none of them knew: I'm not just a consultant. I'm a forensic financial consultant. I specialize in finding hidden assets during divorce proceedings, bankruptcy cases, and fraud investigations. I know how to trace money, uncover debt, identify financial vulnerabilities, and document everything in ways that hold up in court. And I'd been documenting my family's financial chaos for 3 years. Every loan I'd given that wasn't repaid. Every bill I'd covered that they'd claimed they'd pay back. Every co-signed lease, every credit card, every temporary help that became permanent dependency. I had it all. Dates, amounts, communications, proof of non-payment, proof of fraud. I'd been building a case without even realizing it. Or maybe I had been realizing it. Maybe some part of me had known this was inevitable. The $428,000 they'd taken wasn't my savings. It was bait. I'd moved it into that account 3 months ago from my real holdings, the investment accounts, the retirement funds, the rental properties they didn't know I owned, the business I'd started that generated passive income they'd never heard about. I'd moved it there and waited. I'd even mentioned to Mom that I'd gotten a huge bonus and didn't know what to do with all that cash. I'd planted the seed so carefully, so subtly, she probably thought it was her own idea to take it. And when she'd asked if she was still on the account, just in case, I'd said yes. I'd even suggested we keep it that way, for emergencies. I'd given them access. I'd given them opportunity. I'd given them a choice. And they'd chosen theft. Now I had proof. Documented, time-stamped, legally solid proof that my family had stolen from me. Not borrowed, not shared, stolen. And that was exactly what I needed to do. What came next? I drove home to my sad little apartment, poured myself a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and looked at the spreadsheet I'd been maintaining for 3 years. Every financial entanglement. Every co-signed document. Every piece of leverage I had over each member of my family. It was beautiful in its completeness. A roadmap of dependency. They thought they'd taken everything from me. What they'd actually done was hand me the keys to systematically dismantle every security they had. Because I wasn't just co-signer on my parents' house. I was the primary on the loan, with Mom and Dad as co-borrowers. The bank had required it because their credit was terrible. I wasn't just a reference on Natasha's condo lease. I was the guarantor who'd put up a security deposit she couldn't afford and sign paperwork promising to cover any damages or unpaid rent. I wasn't just a helpful sister who'd co-sign Julian's truck. I was the primary borrower because his credit score was so bad he couldn't get approved on his own. I wasn't just family helping family. I was the foundation their entire financial lives were built on. And foundations can be removed. I pulled up the mortgage documents for my parents' house first. The house they loved, the house in the gated community, the house that gave them status and bragging rights at their country club. The house I could legally demand they refinance or sell within 30 days with proper notice. Then I looked at Natasha's lease. The luxury condo in Harbor Point, the place she posted Instagram photos from, the place she threw parties at, pretending it was hers. The lease I could terminate with 60 days' notice as the guarantor, especially with evidence of financial misrepresentation. Then Julian's truck. The ridiculous lifted monstrosity he'd insisted he needed for his contracting business, that had never materialized. The truck with my name on the title, my insurance covering it, my credit backing it. The truck I could legally repossess whenever I wanted because I was the primary owner. One by one, I pulled up every document, every agreement, every financial tie that bound us together. And I started making lists. What could be terminated immediately? What required notice? What required legal process? What could be done quietly? What would make noise? By the time I finished, it was 3 a.m. And I had a plan. Not a revenge plan. Revenge is emotional, messy, prone to backfiring. This was a deconstruction. Methodical, legal, and utterly devastating. I was going to remove myself from every financial obligation connected to my family. Every single one. And when I was done, they would be left with nothing but the choices they'd made and the debt they'd accumulated. The daughter who'd always been there to catch them would simply stop existing in their financial world. And watching them fall would be the best $428,000 I'd ever spent. My name is Sophia Brennan. I'm 31 years old. I'm a forensic financial consultant who knows exactly how to untangle complex financial situations. And my family had just given me the motivation to untangle myself from theirs. They took my money. Now I was going to take away every safety net they'd built using my name, my credit, my trust. They wanted to see what family does. I was about to show them. I worked 3 jobs through college. I studied forensic accounting because I was good with numbers and I liked solving puzzles. I graduated summa cum laude with $47,000 in student loan debt. Julian dropped out after 2 years because college wasn't his vibe. He'd accumulated $18,000 in credit card debt buying equipment for various business ideas that never materialized. My parents paid it off and told him everyone makes mistakes. When I got my first job at Crawford & Associates, a consulting firm in Brookhaven, making $52,000 a year, my parents threw a small dinner. Halfway through, Dad asked if I could loan him $5,000 to cover some business expenses until a big client paid him. I gave him the money. He never paid it back. When I asked about it 6 months later, he acted offended that I was keeping score. That was the first time. But it wasn't the last. Because that's the thing about people who use you, they can't stand it when you finally stop letting them. The morning after they stole my money, I woke up at 5 a.m. with absolute clarity. No anger, no sadness, just crystal clear purpose. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and pulled up the master file I'd been building for 3 years. Every loan. Every co-signed document. Every financial connection. Then I started making calls. First call, my attorney, Rebecca Hartford, who specialized in contract law and family financial disputes. Rebecca, it's Sophia Brennan. I need you to review several legal documents and advise me on termination procedures. What kind of documents? Co-signed mortgages, vehicle loans, rental guarantees, and personal loans with documented non-payment. I could hear her intake of breath. Sophia, are we talking about your family? Yes. What happened? They drained my savings account yesterday. $428,000. I'm done. Silence. Then, send me everything. I'll review it today and call you back by noon. Second call, my contact at Riverview Savings, a manager named David Shen who I'd helped on a fraud case 2 years ago. David, I need to remove someone from a joint account and I need to understand my legal options if that person recently withdrew the full balance without my knowledge. Was it theft or authorized withdrawal? Legally authorized. Morally theft. Family? My mother. He sighed. Give me the account number. I'll pull the records and see what we're working with. Third call, my financial advisor, Margaret Ross. Margaret, I need to liquidate several positions and restructure my portfolio. I also need to move some assets into more protected vehicles. How much are we talking about? Everything that's currently visible in standard accounts. I need to make myself look broke on paper while maintaining actual wealth and protected trusts. Sophia, that's a pretty aggressive move. What's going on? I'm severing financial ties with people who've been exploiting me. I need to appear judgment-proof while actually being very much not. I can do that. Give me 48 hours. By noon, I had responses from all 3. Rebecca had reviewed my documents and delivered the beautiful news. I was the primary on every single major financial obligation connected to my family. The mortgage, the vehicle loan, the rental guarantee. In every case, I had legal standing to terminate my involvement with proper notice. You can remove yourself from all of these, she said. But understand, Sophia, this will have severe consequences for them. The mortgage will need to be refinanced within 30 days or the property goes into foreclosure. The truck will need to be refinanced or voluntarily surrendered. The rental guarantee being pulled means your sister will need to find a new guarantor or face eviction. I understand. Are you sure you want to do this? I thought about the champagne glasses. The smug smiles. The way they divided up my life savings like it was theirs. The way they justified it as teaching me about family. I'm sure. Then I'll draft the notices. You'll need to deliver them in writing with proof of delivery. I'd recommend certified mail to cover all legal bases. David from the bank had worse news, but news I'd expected. The withdrawal was completely legal. I had no recourse for getting the money back because Mom had been an authorized user on the account. However, he added, you can remove her access immediately going forward. And if you can demonstrate a pattern of financial abuse or exploitation, you might have grounds for a civil suit, though that's an uphill battle when the access was voluntarily granted. I'm not suing for the money, I said. I just needed confirmation that what they did was legal so I know I'm not overreacting. Sophia, can I ask why you're doing this? Because the people who've been taking from me are about to realize I was never as helpless as they thought. By the end of that first day, I had a complete action plan. This wasn't revenge. Revenge would be trying to hurt them. This was extraction. Removing myself from their financial ecosystem and letting them experience the natural consequences of their choices for the first time in their lives. They'd taken my safety net. Now I was removing theirs. And I was going to do it so quietly, so professionally, so legally, they wouldn't know what hit them until it was far too late to stop it. Because the daughter they'd underestimated, the one they'd dismissed as boring and overly responsible, the one they thought existed to fund their dreams? She was about to show them exactly what overly responsible meant when it stopped working in their favor. The deconstruction was about to begin. 72 hours after they stole from me, I started dismantling their world. Monday, Rebecca filed notice with Silvercrest Lending. I was exercising my right as primary borrower to demand immediate refinancing or sale. They had 30 days or face foreclosure. Tuesday, I contacted Mountain Peak Auto Finance and requested voluntary repossession of Julian's truck. As primary borrower and title holder, it was my right. Wednesday, I withdrew as guarantor on Natasha's Harbor Point condo lease. She'd need a new guarantor or 3-month security deposit within 60 days, or face eviction. Thursday, I canceled everything I'd been paying for 3 years. Home security system. Premium cable. Cell phone family plan for all 4 of them. Every subscription, every service, every convenience. Friday, I reported fraudulent charges on the credit cards they'd been using in my name. Natasha's card with $15,000 she'd maxed out. Julian's card he'd never paid. Both closed immediately with fraud investigations opened. By week's end, I'd removed every financial support system they'd built on my foundation. All in silence. No calls. No confrontations. Just legal notices and certified mail. The calls started day 8. Mom's shrill panic about foreclosure. Dad demanding I fix the error. Julian confused about his repossessed truck. Natasha hysterical about her frozen credit card. 47 calls the first day. 62 the second. I answered none of them. Day 10, they showed up at my door. All 4, united front, demanding I let them in. I watched through the security camera and called building security instead. There are 4 people refusing to leave. I need them removed. They were escorted out 6 minutes later. Then came the emails. Long, rambling messages about family obligation, about how I was destroying them over money, about how disappointed they were. I read every one. Saved every one. Never responded. Because here's what they revealed: not once did anyone apologize for stealing. Not once did anyone acknowledge wrongdoing. Every message was about how I was hurting them. They'd taken $428,000 and I was the villain. Week 2 brought desperation. The mortgage company denied their refinancing. Credit too low, debt-to-income ratio too high. 22 days to sell or lose the house. Julian's credit dropped 140 points. Natasha needed a new guarantor in 53 days. Cell phones shut off. Cable went dark. Credit card companies demanding immediate payment. Everything was collapsing. And I'd done nothing except stop propping them up. Week 3 brought the guilt brigade. My aunt called. Your mother is beside herself. Did she mention stealing over $400,000 from me? Silence. Childhood friends reached out. Extended family called. One by one, they tried to guilt me into being the bigger person. One by one, I told them the truth about the champagne celebration, the smug dividing of my life savings, the complete lack of remorse. The flying monkeys got quiet real fast. Day 29, Mom broke. She showed up at my office, got past security claiming emergency. I found her in the lobby, mascara running, hands shaking, aged 10 years in a month. 5 minutes, I said, leading her to a conference room. They're taking the house tomorrow. We couldn't refinance. Sophia, we're losing everything. You're losing the house you could only afford because of my credit. The house you're losing because you chose theft over maintaining the relationship that kept you afloat. We're family. Family helps each other. I helped you for 9 years. Gave you over $100,000. Co-signed your house. Guaranteed Natasha's condo. Paid for Julian's truck. Covered your bills. And you repaid me by stealing everything the moment you could. We were desperate. You were greedy. You were celebrating with champagne. You called me naive. Said I'd waste it anyway. You laughed. She couldn't deny it. Please, she whispered. They need you. They need my money. There's a difference. What do you want? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. Please, Sophia. Please help us. I looked at this woman who'd raised me to be useful instead of loved, who'd taught me my value was in what I could provide. And I felt nothing. Just clarity. You're not sorry you hurt me. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry there were consequences. If losing your house is what it takes for you to apologize, then your apology is worthless. So you're going to let us become homeless? I didn't destroy anything. I removed myself from a toxic situation. You destroyed yourselves by building your life on stolen foundations. Your 5 minutes are up. She left crying. I went back to my meeting. That night, Dad's in the hospital. Heart attack. Hope you're happy. Julian. I called. Confirmed he was stable. Stress-induced, not critical. He'd be fine. I didn't visit. This is what you've done. Hope it was worth it. Natasha, with eviction notice screenshot. I didn't respond. The house foreclosed day 31. Julian's truck was auctioned. Natasha moved to a studio she could barely afford, working retail. Dad got an actual job for the first time in 5 years. Mom sold her Mercedes for a used Honda. They rented a 2-bedroom apartment without gates, without prestige, without the lifestyle I'd been subsidizing. They started living within their actual means. And I thrived. I launched a specialized consulting service for people dealing with financial abuse from family members. It became the fastest growing division at Crawford & Associates. I bought a second investment property. Started a scholarship fund for first-generation students working multiple jobs like I once did. I went to therapy. Processed years of conditioning that taught me my worth was in my usefulness. 6 months after foreclosure, I changed my number and address. Didn't give them the new information. If they wanted to reach me, they could go through my attorney. They never did. A year later, I ran into Natasha at a coffee shop. She looked older, tired. Humbled. She walked over instead of leaving. Sophia. Natasha. I'm guessing you don't want to talk to me. That depends. Are you going to blame me for consequences of your choices? She looked down. No. I'm working on accountability in therapy. That's good. You were right. About all of it. We used you. Treated you like an ATM, not a person. When you finally set boundaries, we acted like you were the villain instead of recognizing we'd been the villains all along. I studied her face. No manipulation. Just exhaustion and genuine regret. I'm glad you're in therapy. Are you happy? Happier than I've ever been. Good. You deserve that. She paused. I don't expect forgiveness. But I wanted you to know I finally get it. What we took from you. It wasn't just money. No. It wasn't. She left, and I sat there thinking about the girl I used to be. The one who would have crumbled at family disappointment. The one who would have sacrificed herself for peace. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her worth had nothing to do with what she could provide to people who refused to appreciate it. My family stole $428,000 from me. And it was the best money I ever spent. Because it bought me freedom. Freedom from obligation. From guilt. From a family that had been slowly draining me for years. They took everything they could see. And in doing so, they lost the one thing they actually needed. Me. Not my money. Not my co-signatures. Not my credit or willingness to always be there. Just me. And by the time they realized what they'd lost, I was gone. Living my life. Building my future. Thriving in ways they'd never see because they were no longer part of my world. Some families build you up. Some tear you down. And some teach you exactly who you need to become by showing you exactly who they are. Mine taught me that sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is walk away. So I did. And I never looked back.